Hello everyone, my name is Phil Calvert and a warm welcome to the Financial Advisor Mastermind and Challenge. Over the next few days, leading experts and consultants to the financial planning profession will be sharing amazing insights into just what makes a world-class financial advice business. Today I'm delighted to be speaking with Jason Butler, formerly one of the most high-profile financial planners in the profession as the founder of Bloomsbury Wealth. But today he's joining us in his role as Head of Financial Education at Salary Finance. Hi Jason, great to see you and thanks for joining us today.
Hi Phil, thanks very much for inviting me.
Now we've met a few times and I think we probably met when I was a broker consultant many years ago, somewhere in the city when you were at Bloomsbury. Bloomsbury was a really successful business and you've either retired from that or sold out. How's that worked out?
Yeah. I sold my share to the other two business partners in 2015, in the autumn of 2015. And since then, I've just focused all my energies and efforts on everything and anything to do with financial well-being in the widest sense, because my passion is to make a positive difference to lots of people, not just a handful of wealthy families, which is what we dealt with at Bloomsbury. And that business continues to do great things. It still continues to grow. It's in safe hands. And I'm very proud of what we built there. But my focus is very much on the mass market, which it doesn't just mean people that aren't wealthy. I mean, the mass market means everyone and anyone. So that's my focus of what can we do to help people have a better relationship with money and get the most out of their life.
That's really interesting, and I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts on that. Just going back a little bit into your backstory with Bloomsbury. You know, it was a very successful business. It still is a successful business. If you think back to when you first got started with it, if you think back now, what would you wish you had known back then that you knew now, or you know now as how to run a financial planning business?
That's a great question, which is why you've asked it.
Yeah.
Well, we're always easy with hindsight. Okay, that's one thing I have learned, and we mustn't beat ourselves up when we look back and think, oh, you know. But if I would say, what are the timeless lessons I got? One is your client experience, what you're delivering to the clients, and the way that you deliver it, and the way you make them feel, is absolutely up there with eating, breathing, and sleeping. So it doesn't matter what you think, it doesn't matter what you say, it's how you make them feel. And that's the same today, whether you're running a digital business, a traditional face-to-face business, or a hybrid business, whether you're mass market, whether you're niche. How you make your customers feel is the number one focus that you need to have. And that's an emotional sense, even if they feel secure, or if they feel that they're part of something smart, or they feel cared for, or they feel safe, whatever it is, it's that feelings that you evoke in them. And all great brands are built on how you make people feel. The second thing I would say is you can't underestimate the importance of very, very good communication. Now, notice I don't mean advertising and marketing. Communication is everything, because you can have the best technical knowledge in the world and you can have the most qualifications in the world, but if you don't have a means of helping your clients convey stories to your clients and helping them express their stories, and it's a two-way street, and social media has merely facilitated more of a two-way street, but it's that ability to create stories that resonate with your existing customers, with their family and their friends and their colleagues, and the outside world, that enables you to share what you're about. So the first thing is how you make people feel. The second is how you communicate on a two-way street between your customers and you, so that your existing customers and your influencers and your cheerleaders, as it were, people who support your business and care about it, can actually articulate stories to potential customers that are out there. So it doesn't matter whether it's a journalist, whether it's your existing client, whether it's a friend of your client, or whether it's a broker consultant or a product provider. It's what people say about you when you're not in the room, and you have to be really intentional about making it easy for people to say great things about you. Yeah. So that's about crafting stories and communications that make it easy for them to, so it could be writing reports, it could be how you've solved problems for people, it's sharing success stories and challenges of other clients. And I think what the modern way of doing that, I think, is building a sense of community in your firm without necessarily navel gazing and making existing customers all meet each other, but finding a way of creating a sense of shared community that we're safer together than on our own. And the third thing is price it's not a normal sort of business, financial services, particularly a service-driven business, is that price has to be fair for what you're delivering. But that doesn't mean to say you have to be the dearest or the cheapest. So it is what it is. It's always going to be cheaper to service your own car. Always.
Yeah.
Whether you want to service your own car, whether you should service your own car, whether the complexities of it mean that it's, you getting up to speed. And that's the point, is that price for me was always about being upfront, and we were always upfront with our fees. And I think, being proud about what you charge comes, and charging, I would say you need to charge a fair fee for what you do, but you need to make sure it's value for the people that you're delivering it. So the final thing was just not to be afraid about charges. And I'll put them on your website. I don't know why people don't. I've just looked at one website of a brand new wealth center launched, which has been backed by one of the biggest financial services companies in the world, and it's named after something that lives in the sea, and I won't say any more than that. And they haven't got anything about their prices. It goes on about fair, transparent, no surprises, but nowhere does it say how they charge. Yeah. So that to me is a disconnect. So the final thing is just be clear about the value, but also be clear about the price.
Price is a topic that seems to be very high profile at the moment. Everybody's talking about it. And I see people kind of shooting off thoughts, all different angles. What are your thoughts on pricing? I mean, is the profession missing a trick as to how we get this across? I mean, is it as simple as sticking it on your website?
Well, I think you've got to be clear what it is you're providing. And I gave a talk a couple of years ago at the PFS, and I explained a very simple, non-sophisticated little rectangle box, okay? And on the bottom, it had financial organization, getting and keeping.
Yeah.
Being well organized. That's data, documents, dates. And on the top, it had life planning, financial advice, whatever you want to call it, the services. And I think if you think about what the components are, I mean, for instance, I want to buy financial organization and some wise counsel. I don't need someone to do the numbers, and I don't need someone to arrange the products or services, investment services or tax wrappers.
Yeah.
Okay? So I'm actually quite happy to pay for financial organization on the bottom. That's a portal, digital document vault, someone reminding me of things that I might have forgotten about, key things that matter to me, inputs that I can take from my own spreadsheet and my own planning software. But I also want to talk to someone, just chew the cud about key things in my family and my wider family with intergenerational planning. I'm backing other businesses, how I should be thinking about, I was very fortunate to take part in the Transact situation, and, thinking about, shall I sell down? How many shall I sell down? Does it make sense to keep such a large holding, in that one company, but I like the company. So having someone you can talk through, which are what I call sometimes not clear situations, to help me make the decision. So I make the decision. Now, they are 2 out of 4 components. So what's it reasonable to pay for that? Well,
yeah.
I think, financial organization, that's worth paying 2,000 or 3,000 for, I think, if you're a reasonably successful person. Wise counsel, I think that's probably worth paying 2,000 or 3,000 for having someone on side, whether it's hourly rate or flat retainer. And then anything else is what it is. So I think we need to be looking at what it is people want to buy, and then thinking about what the value is that we're providing. And, from my point of view, so I'm someone who, written books about the subject of planning. It gives me great comfort to know that my wife knows who she could call and where everything is if I wasn't around keeping an eye on things. That, for me, gives me great value. That would be value to me.
Yeah.
But different people want different things. And I think the key thing with a firm, it's perfectly okay to set your stall out with a certain type of client or a certain type of profile of customer that you want to deal with. And it's a case of rejecting everyone who doesn't meet that requirement, or finding a home for them, So it's not just about level of wealth. It's the mindset of the person. It's their challenges. It's how they communicate things, how they express things. So entrepreneurs, second generation entrepreneurs, are different from first generation entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
People who've just happened to take £1 or £2 million out of a business that they got sucked into and ended up with some shares, but really are an employee, have a different mindset to people who actually did the grind work and put the house on the line and put every last penny into it. And again, we know from the speaking community, if you're on the road all the time and your job is performing and you love that, but bookwork and accounting is not your big thing. And we know we've met some speakers in that area, a bit like they said with Ken Dodge, we know that comedians are no accountants, but accountants can be comedians. So I think we, as a firm, you have to be really clear about the kind of client that you want to serve, that you will serve, and also that you won't serve. because that determines value. And working in niches, for instance, which we were always frightened to do in Bloomsbury. And I suppose we've sort of developed we developed a couple of niches over the years just by default. But it's easier to deal with a niche because you know the problems, you can design processes and systems that help deliver that advice at scale and consistently. And it's just easier to work with in affinity groups. It's just easier. So people talk about divorcees. Well, that's one aspect. But then what kind of divorcees? Are they women who really are uncomfortable being around men and have had a terrible situation? Are they the men coming out of high-profile female go-getters? You know, that's a specific. So there's sub-niches within niches, and I think this day and age you have to go deeper, and you can have several niches. But I think the firms of the future really know their clients inside out before even the clients know.
Yeah, that is so true. I know that a lot of financial planners, that they kind of get what you mean when you say focus on niche, but they quite often feel that they're going to miss out on the other. If I just focus on female surgeons, I'm going to miss out on everybody else. And it just doesn't work that way, does it? It actually makes you less of a needle in a haystack, and you become the haystack, as it were.
Well, if you're everything to everyone, you're nobody to anyone.
Yeah.
So I think the key, again, going back to what have I learned, you can have several niches, okay? You can have 3 or 4 niches and serve them all very well. That's nothing wrong with that. But work those niches, devise your processes, your storyboard, your initial discovery meeting, your pre-discovery telephone call, whatever it is, the way your information collection, everything will be geared around that kind of person. So, for instance, if you're dealing with surgeons, you know, we know they work long hours. We know that they do erratic shifts. We know that they are chaotic at the best of times. I don't know, it's from someone who works with them. But we know they're extremely intelligent people, and they work in very short bursts, and they don't have a lot of bandwidth, but they will make decisions. Yeah. So you have to build the business. You have to accept that some people might want evening calls, and you might have to build your business around that reality. It may not be you that does it. But if you want to serve that niche, it's about the customer, not about you. It's a clean sheet of paper. What sort of business would serve this niche brilliantly so that they bored the pants off their friends, their colleagues, their relatives about how great you are, and you give them stories to help them tell people how great you are.
Yeah.
It's a case of like, it's almost like before you've lifted that weight wrong, or before you've done that rowing wrong, the instructor's there and says, "Oh, before you start today, I just want to point out a couple of things, how you can get the maximum output for minimum effort." So before you aren't embarrassing anyone, you hadn't even thought about it, but they're there. And that's the mark of a great business, almost anticipating things before they have a chance to even know what's happened. And that gives reassurance. It helps build trust, and it helps people think, "Oh, I've got the best people." So when you turn around and say, "Well, our fees are going up this year from 10,000 to 12,000 for what we do, but for you, we're going to give you a 1-year moratorium, which gives you 2 choices. Right? 1, it gives you a choice over the next year to decide whether you want to pay that increase, or if you feel that you don't, it gives you a chance to find another firm. We'd love to keep you. We really want to look after you, but to give a great service, we're going to have to put our fees up because we've been undercharging for 2 years." So, for example, but if you're really strong about your niche and you've got lots of people knocking on the door, and you make it clear that you want to keep them, but you give them 1 year where they're not going to have the increase. Yeah. It shows how confident you are, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
A business that can't put its prices up is a business that's not confident about its existing customer loyalty or its marketing message and its communication.
I'm fascinated by what you're doing now. You built your reputation offering high quality financial planning based there in the city. There's a perception of that company that you focus on the high end of the market, high quality. That's the perception you get. You've come out of that situation now, and you're now looking at arguably a different niche. Let's call it the masses, which for many financial planners is an absolute no-no. They can't see how there could ever be value that they could always give a great deal of value, but they could never see how they could actually help the masses. Yet we all know, we hear it on the news every day, that the need to have financial well-being, to feel comfortable and relaxed about your personal finances, is something that is becoming more and more important. So much so, and I saw it on a video on the Salary Finance website, where it has fundamental benefits to organizations as well. And it sounds like a no-brainer in many ways, but if the employees are feeling comfortable in their financial skin, that's obviously going to have benefits to the organization they work for as well. So just talk me through how you got involved with salary finance, basically what they are and what they do.
Yeah, well, as part of my exit, I did a year where I didn't really do a great deal, quite frankly, other than just chill out. It's a bit like coming out of a long-term, marriage or relationship. 17 years I'd ran that sort of roller coaster of the firm, and I loved most of it, and it paid me very well, and it was great. But you need a year of decompressing. So one big takeaway for everyone: if you ever have a change in circumstances, it's okay not to jump into something straight away. But like everything, and I was struggling to decide exactly which route I wanted to go down to make a difference to lots of people. But the financial well-being sort of sector, as it were, I always knew the workplace was an area where you could make a big difference through employers. And I sort of a convolence of things came together. And essentially what happened was I was asked to actually present a whole series of well-being talks, having done a lot of research in this area. I've been researching it for about a year solid. And someone said, would you come along and do these wellbeing talks for us? We've got this contract, but we don't know how to deliver it. So I said, well, yes, but I'll have to do it my way. It won't be a workshop. It's going to be more of a performance. It's going to be more about inspiring people why they should care about their finances, because I think that's a big problem for lots of people. It's not just a wealth thing. It's people are frightened about money. They're embarrassed. They're shameful. They feel guilty. They feel overwhelmed. To a greater or lesser extent, they're trapped sometimes in a consumerist lifestyle and expensive, trying to me too. They've got marketing messages. So I thought it was much more about people's psychology. And it gave me a great opportunity to sort of, I suppose, build my first album, if you will. It gave me a chance to try lots of things. I felt like Chris Rock, the comedian. I was trying out in small clubs, as it were. It was a bit like Gary Barlow doing all those, when he was young, doing all the northern clubs, the working man's clubs. It gave me a chance to try what messages and speak to people. I mean, literally, I did loads of these talks all around the country. Every week, and I was finding stuff that went flat, stuff that really resonated, stuff that people could get behind. And it really, really excited me. And I suddenly thought, I've got something here. So I continued researching, and I wrote my last book, which was out last year, was Money Moments. That was my attempt of trying to write something that people could really read, who don't even read. And the Audible version of that comes out soon. And that was just my chance of trying to put together something that was like when I'm not in the room. But what I've realized is that I could get people motivated to look at their finances differently and the role of money when I was in the room or if I was live streaming. But what I thought was, and I've done the book, so some people engage with that. I thought, well, what I really need to do is I need some virtual platform, some way of connecting with these people when I'm not in the room, but with my style and with me curating the information, because it's not a case of there isn't information out there. It's a case of signposting it and making it digestible and palatable and interesting for people. And I firmly believe video is the way forward. Video, podcasts, etc. So I bumped into salary finance because in the wellbeing space, there are a handful of companies that really in this. You've got the app providers, who are looking for a problem, a solution looking for a problem, whether they're, whether it's data from your bank or whether it's linked to a bank account or whatever, and that's fine. But the other group of wellbeing providers were sort of arms of financial advice firms like Close Brothers and Wealth at Work, and perfectly lovely people, but they were really the sessions they were doing and the talks they were doing was really geared up to sort of feeding the advice arm. And I always thought not all employers are going to want that. But then there's another group of well-being providers in the market, of which salary finance is probably one of the major providers. And the way it works is this: they started off 3 years ago with saying, okay, it's all about, you've got a sort of a quadrant of 4 things. Okay, you've got high impact, but take a long time. You've got low impact, and can be done quickly. High impact can be done quickly. So it's either quick or it takes time. It's low impact or it's high impact. So financial education takes a long, long time and is relatively low impact, but it is necessary.
Yeah.
But right over here, high impact and can be delivered quickly is getting people out of expensive debt so that they can then sort of take a breath and start becoming a saver. So they developed a product that they called Loan, which was basically, the idea was that we know about your employer, we can make some conditions about your employment tenure, and we can offer you loans at much lower cost than payday loans, overdrafts, credit cards, even personal loans, because we know about your employer, and the loan is repaid and deducted from your salary before you get the salary. So the employer, basically they created a platform that enables people to apply for a loan, get the money within an hour, and it's deducted from their salary while they're an employee. And if they leave, they have to fill out a direct debit. But it means that the profile of everyone who would need borrowing, whatever they're all costed at different levels according to the risk. But even that someone that would have been charged 40% might be charged 19%. Someone who might have been charged 12% is being charged 6 or 7%. So the idea was that everyone, according to your risk, we could lower the risk for everyone and the cost, therefore, of loans. And we could get people out of expensive debt, avoiding payday loans. So that was the first product. Then the second product was called Save. Very simple, is that once you've stopped paying a loan, before you sort of come to the end of it, they contact the people and say, well, that £100 a month you haven't missed, you've been paying off that loan. You've now about to repay the loan. Why don't you direct that into a savings account? Get yourself 1% or whatever it is. Not a massive return, but it's getting people to save. So you're starting to see people now finishing their loans, obviously now direct their loan repayments, again, directly from their salary into savings. So we're starting to get people to build emergency funds, fix the roof while the sun is shining. And from early next year, Salary Finance is the first ever company that can also make that deduction from salary for the employers that are signed up for the new Help to Save product, the government product through National Savings. So, and they've just announced a new product called Advance, so that you can actually have an advance of what you've already earned in week 1, 2, and 3 of your earnings just from an app. So you just click a button, and if you've earned £600 so far, you can have your £600. So in other words, the desire of the employer to want to pay you monthly might not coincide from time to time with you might have an outgoing that comes in that you didn't think of, or so whether it's a regular thing and you want to turn it into weekly, or it's ad hoc and you just want to sort of have what you've already earned so far in the month to meet an expense you didn't know about. It's putting the individual in control. And there'll be other products developing soon. So essentially it was a loan product. There's an advance of salary product. There's a savings product, including the Help to Save product. And there'll be other things like risk and stuff in future. So the idea is the employer is the place where we can wrap all these products around great financial education. So for the last 6 months, I've been I've built a whole series of box sets, if you will. And my central tenet is, look, forget Game of Thrones. You can take your tablet to bed and binge watch me on season 1 about taking control of your money, or season 2, how to build wealth. And we're building season 3 now, which is called From Work to Play, living off your money. So, and again, guides, we create guides that are like billboards. If you imagine you riding down the motorway, you wouldn't have enormous dense text, would you? No. Which is what most guides are. Someone's given someone a load of text and it's boring. So we just create guides that are more like billboards with signposts and giving you the key things you need to think of in an engaging way. But the idea is to signpost other places. So, like for instance, how to handle a rising income. I've never seen a guide written like that. We did it. But equally, where we find content from other people like the Money Advice Service or my friends at Finimize or other providers, we will syndicate and bring content in, but we're chopping it up and making it accessible for people through their employer. And some employers, so for instance, one big employer has got a really well developed communication message for its staff about this whole benefit package. So we just find out where the gaps are and where it makes sense to sort of fill in with some of our educational content. Okay, and whether they need the products or not is irrelevant. That's fine. But equally, some other employers have got a very badly developed or not developed at all communication strategy. So we would do a bit more intervention with them and say, look, this is what's working with other companies. And that brings us probably neatly on to talk about the research and the financial fitness scoring tool.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to ask you about that.
Well, and people, I'm sure you'll put show notes with this, but you can download the Employer's Guide to Financial Wellbeing from the Salary Finance website. And what we did was we commissioned some very extensive analysis of 10,000 people in the UK who reflected all 25 sectors of the economy. So from service companies, manufacturing companies, retail, construction, you name it, professional services. And we wanted to find out first and foremost where the role of money in people's lives and the sources of stress and concern and what was blocking them from having a good outcome. and also the levels of stress that they experience and mental, the effect it has on their mental well-being. And we essentially found that there were really 5 groups. One are struggling and literally just trying to keep their head up above water. There's about 1.3 million people in the country, all the way up to 5. Money is not a source of problems or worry, and they've got financial independence as we might define it. But people can go up and down that ladder, 1 to 5. And the other thing is getting to a level we want to keep people there. And what we found was really interesting. The largest percentage of people were in the 2 zone and 4.
Okay.
Bimodal. So it wasn't a standard distribution that most people at 3. Actually, the groups were 2 and 4, and obviously much smaller at 1s and 5s and 3. So it's sort of like this. And what was really interesting was, although the 82% of people at 1 were experiencing extreme levels of mental and physical stress from their money worries, 8% of 5s did still as well. So although it did, it reduces as your wealth goes up, it doesn't go in a straight line and go for, eradicate all your problems, because most money problems are emotionally driven and instinctively driven. And what we also found is that although the highest levels of stress were in people earning between about 15 to 20,000, as you'd expect, because distant sort of living, also the next biggest group of people earning 100,000 or more.
Right, that's interesting.
Yeah, and very, very interesting. I'm going to do some more work in this area, but get the report. You can download the report for free, and it will give you all the insights about productivity at work. And if you've got happy, satisfied employees who have a handle on their finances and they feel in control, and they're using money in a positive way to have whatever they define as a good life, then you're playing the odds as an employer that they're going to be productive employees, and also that they're going to welcome and appreciate the benefits they have from work.
And that was coming through. That's coming through to organisations, that by addressing the financial well-being of employees, there are clear benefits to employers.
Yeah, I mean, you've got some employers, let's be clear, who think, it's not down to us to tell employees how to manage their money. It's all, it's a grown-up world. But they are people who are probably at a 4. And they're not realising that actually there are 4s and 5s who feel stressed about money, okay, because they never feel like they have enough or in control. But 2s and 3s really do struggle. And that's probably the vast majority of their employees. And the point is not telling people what to do with their money. It's not telling them what a good life is. What it is it's recognizing that money is a source of confusion, pressure, worry, concern, and cognitive overload, because people have to make decisions, coupled with the fact that we're instinctive and we always favor the here and now. And we've got marketing messages telling us that you're cool if you buy this and you buy that. When there was an advert the other day I saw on television, I don't watch commercial telly and I always mute it. I was watching the Royal Variety performance. It was one about a car, and they were taking the kid to school, and they felt embarrassed in the car that were at. Then when the mum and dad got this new car, suddenly they thought, what a terrible message. And I said to my 15-year-old daughter, I said, that is saying you're nobody unless you have stuff. Oh, no, Dad, they're just trying to sell a car. I said, I know, but do you understand? That's so bad. And that's on prime time television.
Yeah.
So going back to the research, what we did from that was we obviously developed a tool called the Financial Fitness Score. And the Financial Fitness Score, you can have all the apps in the world, you can do all the financial education, you can give people books, you can send them on courses, but the simplest way of getting is to break the taboo of talking about money, and the simplest way of getting people to be interested is to tell them something very quickly about themselves, and also how they compare to others, because that's basic human psychology. So what we said was, okay, we're going to ask 10 questions. It's not a deep dive into your spreadsheets and detailed scenario planning and tax analysis and looking at your pay slips for the last 9 years. This is just 10 attitudinal questions that really relate to the here and now. So, do you regularly run out of money at the end of the month? Yes, no, sometimes, occasionally. Those sort of questions, in the last year, have you X, Y, and Z? So it's that kind of stuff. And what's really interesting, within less than a minute and a half, if it took you a minute and a half to do the questions, you get your score immediately out of 5. So I got my score of 4.5. And, and by every measure, I'm not the Sultan of Brunei, but I should be a 5. But it's because there's some aspects of your finances you can never be sure about.
Yes,
one of the questions was, do you believe you've got enough to meet all your needs for the rest of your life? Well, I am if I stay married. I am if I don't have serious health issues and concerns. I am if my kids don't get bankruptcy and need me to bail them out. I am if. So I can't answer that question like in the way that yes, because I don't ever know.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
although the reality is it's very difficult to get a 5, the average in the UK is 3.1. So you can immediately get an immediate score of where you are on the financial wellbeing score. You can compare that to the national average, and here's the power for employers, and this is useful for financial advisors thinking to add value to their employer, their owner-managed business clients, or even the normal clients, is you can compare the aggregate score of your employees with your competitors or your sector. So a major supermarket, we have a number of the major employers in the country in the FTSE 100, and so one supermarket chain might have a different aggregate score for financial wellness from the tool for their staff than another one, and we might say, well, your score is 2.9 in aggregate versus your nearest competitor, which is 3.3.
Yeah, yeah.
So you start to get then companies, 3 things happen. They've got an effective measure of their employees' financial well-being, which is based on the employee's assessment. It's quick and easy to do. It's a great way of having a metrics. What we're doing in benefits and general well-being and education support, is it working? If it's not working, what could we do differently, and what do the best people do? So we share best practice without giving away people's details of what works. So we're going to be developing this over the coming couple of years to be much more of a diagnostic for employers and the underlying employees to be able to move the dial. So if you are an extreme 1 and 2, you have different needs to someone who's, say, 3 or 4.
Yes.
And the other thing is we're trying to also make sure that we aren't always speaking the language purely of a 4, because most financial education is written by 4s for 4s.
That's kind of the exact thing I was going to say. So what's the lesson here for financial advisors who, for whatever reason, think that that's not a market that they could go into or make money from? What can they learn from this and what you guys are doing?
Well, I think first and foremost, I think there are 3 things that financial advisors can take away. They have to understand, if they don't already, and I don't want to sort of tell advisors what to think because they know what they're doing, but my experience is we underestimate the real sense of stress and worry and pressure that people feel about their finances. I knew it when I was dealing with people with 25, 30, 40 million pounds. They still got pressures and worries. It's just a different form of stress. For most people, money is pain. It is pain. So I think understanding that's where people come from, and therefore everything in your communication, your client experience, your offering, the way you formulate everything has to come from the point of view that most people, money is pain. It is pain and a source of discomfort. Once you do that and you realize that people, they can still might be able to use a spreadsheet, but they do it to plan their holiday, not so much to plan their finances.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. The second thing is to understand that if you can help people feel better about their money, then they will live a better life and they will be healthier and happier. It's just a great thing to do in the world. And one of the ways that I think you can do that is by, which most financial advisors do, you start with the end in mind. You have to start with, what does a good life look like? So my latest article in the FT, which is out later this week and will be in the printed paper on Saturday in my regular column, I'm not sure what they've called it, but it's all about, why it's okay to miss out. Yeah. And I talk about, and it's all about the role of materialism. And because we know that, if you can get people to understand what a good life is and the role of money in achieving that, as most good financial planners do, don't underestimate how powerful that is. So you can call it life planning, you can call it financial planning, you can call it whatever you want. But I think it's just being really intentional in a way that the client can map that good life. And that may actually be, it may be a less materialistic lifestyle. It may be not thinking and looking at your finances so often, and actually you only need to worry about this once a year, Mr. Client. That's as healthy as well as not looking at and dealing with your finances. Doing it too much and keep over obsessing about it can also give you paralysis, because you're at the mercy of everything that you can't control.
So playing devil's advocate just for a moment, I would imagine some advisors might be thinking, but how do we make any money out of this? Where do you see that model being?
Well, it's a difficult one. How do you make money out of it? In my travels around the country, because obviously I do live events for Salary Finance as well, in the audiences that there's two types of audience I must just explain before I explain the implications of what I'm going to say now. You've got the prescribed audiences where they have to be there. So that I come along as part of a series of things they're doing on a staff development day, okay, or I'm at a conference they have to be at, or a training session or something. So I get a good broad section of people. That's representative. But then if they are discretionary, they can choose to go or not during work time. I tend to get high-end 3s and 4s. So people are already motivated. So that's not a cross-representative example. But if you take the ones where people are, have to be there, they didn't choose, so sometimes a harder crowd to get going. But once they get going, they realize they're not going to be given a death by PowerPoint stats, and all that stuff, or called out or anything. What I find with those people is that in that audience, there are people who are married to, or know, or are related to, or are friendly with 4s and 5s. Wealth, I know that you do tend to sort of gravitate towards people who are similar to you, but I have a friend, for instance, who is not very wealthy, who I know very, very well. He's wealthy in the sense that I think he lives a very rich life, in the sense that he's an artist. He does all sorts of things. He's a really great guy. He's just a lovely fellow. I said to him, you're the luckiest guy in the world because you've got a great talent and you don't have a complicated life. So I try and use him as a bit of a role model, really, not for the art, but for the living a simple life, because I can't draw. But so I think the messages and the research and the insights and the fitness score, firms could actually use as a means, and this brings me on to the next point, of having more interaction with their wider family. So even if you are dealing with the matriarch or the patriarch or the core wealth, if you want to have a continued ability to look after that wealth in the future, I believe, even if you don't serve them as a core function, you need to have a way of engaging with the wider family, whether up the chain, down the chain, to the side.
Yes.
And I think that's delivering extra value for the core fees that families are paying. So if you can signpost things, if you can create helpful content, if you can provide really simple little guides, if you can do a series of videos of how to or signpost other people's content, you're being helpful. You're earning the right to build trust with people. And if those people are the ones inheriting the money or are minded to inherit it down, so if it's up to granny and granddad or great granny and granddad and they're minded to cascade the wealth down, that's good for your firm to be giving advice on that. Yeah. And if it's the next generation down, the younger generation, the heirs and the heiresses, you've got a potential chance of having the right to be hired by them in the future if it makes sense for you to help them make smart decisions about money.
That's really interesting. I've seen all sorts of figures recently that said there are generations, younger generations to the typical clients of many financial advisors, who it doesn't even occur to them to talk to the same financial advisor that their parents look after. Something else you said, which makes me smile in many ways. I mentioned right at the start, we probably first met when I was a broker consultant. And I started out as a broker consultant in 1978. And
can't believe it, Phil.
I know, it's ridiculous.
That can't be right.
But one of the things I noticed back then when I met financial advisors, and we called them brokers back then, was that the vast majority of them did worksite or workplace marketing. They went into local organizations, they built relationships, and that's how they attracted leads en masse in many ways. And in many ways, you're talking about a very similar thing. I've always said, referrals are a given if you're a professional financial advisor. And I'm also the first person to say we should be using the internet to communicate clearly and so on and so forth. But I'm also the first person to say financial advisors need to get off their backside, stand on their feet in front of groups of people in workplace environments. Talk about the things that you are talking about in your work now.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you looked at it and just say, okay, let's just assume that the vast majority of people in a workplace would not be suitable as your core private planning clients. Okay.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean to say you can't, first of all, generate very good revenue paid for by the employer by you doing small group sessions, workshops, whatever it is. Yeah. But it is cost effective because the employer, whether it's through salary sacrifice or whether the employer pays it, they can pay up to £500 a year for services by salary deduction, or they can just pay it themselves, the employer. And there's no tax on the employee. So if you said, look, if you were prepared to pay £100 per year per employee, and we can do groups of 20 or 25 or 30, and we will do a 45-minute sort of a 1 hour kind of overview and get them rules of the road, have a break, and then do a 1 hour kind of workshop where we get them to do specific things and like a little checklist of things that they're going to go and do to empower them. Now, when I'm not working for salary finance, so 3 days a week I work for them, the other 2 days a week I'm hired by people to come along and do talks. And I'm not the cheapest guy in the world. And I go along to an employer. They pay a flat fee to me. It's a very good wage on any level, whether you look for a daily rate. But I give them a great experience. They know that the employees have had a great interaction. The employees, it's cost effective. Whether I was a financial advisor or not, and I'm not, as you know. But for me, I'm doing something at scale. So whether it's 30 staff or the biggest one I've ever done is 850 staff in one room,
right?
And that's obviously great value for the employer. Harder work for me. But the point is it's value. And the other thing is that when people are in groups, this thing about social taboo and not wanting to talk about money, so my talks are all done through story. So I tell stories. You've seen me speak as well.
Yeah.
So I use anecdotes, and I am very high energy. Most people have to have a lie down afterwards. But the point is, it's not what they're expecting. I'm trying to move them emotionally so that they are motivated. And my big thing is that this is actually a good use of your time. Right at the end, I use logic, which is if you save £1,000 a year, it's like earning 58 grand a year after tax. If you save 3 grand a year, it's like earning 300 and something thousand pounds. So, there are ways that you can communicate with people. So I would say to financial advisors, whether it's someone already in your firm who is minded to want to do this as another profit stream, or another division within the existing firm where you just go out and do work. If you could just do workplace, let's just say you charge £1,500 a day, right, to do workplace presentations. I'm not going to say whether that's high or low or whatever, but let's say you did that and you work for 200 days a year. That is £300,000 of revenue, and it's not regulated. You don't need to worry about whether they're going to become clients. You can position your firm. That 300,000, if you paid a great presenter 100,000 of that, or a couple of presenters working part-time, 50 grand each, you've got 200,000 to then put that into your overall marketing budget for the whole firm. You see, to me, it's a no-brainer.
And people really do value it as well. They've been doing this in the United States for donkey's years, and people value, in a group situation, going along and learning through seminars, workshops.
But here's another point, Phil, is that salary finance can't deal with employers much less than 1,000 employees. We don't deal with the smaller groups, but vast majority of employers out there, of which many of your financial advisor and planner subscribers will have as customers, the actual business owners, are employing people of less than 1,000. That's the vast majority. And we can't get to them because we can only deal with the very largest employers. But there's a massive opportunity, whether it's within the existing business or as a separate division, to run well-being talks, seminars, workshops, whatever you want. And, don't just leave, the old incumbents to do this, who I've mentioned earlier, who do it very well. But you could do this and you've already got the relationship. So if you've got an employer let's say you've got a customer who runs his own business and he's got 100 staff, why wouldn't you offer a great service to distill what you the rules of the road, which you think are simple, but which most people have never been, no one's ever been taught how to budget. No one's been taught the difference, human capital, converting it to, no one's been talked about this dichotomy between the short term and the long term and the role of marketing. No one's had this. So when you go through it with people, when I explain stuff to people and try and make it humorous and, you see me do my sort of mad bit, left and right, the two types of people that live in your head. But it does get people laughing. And I remember the talk that you saw me at, one of the people came up and said, just before you said about the planner and the doer, the two personalities that live in our head, and you woke us all up when you ran around the room, I was just saying to myself, there's two types of people in my head, and then you said it. So a great talk like that, a great interaction, is often telling people truisms, but in a way that strikes a chord with them so that they will do something. And if you physically and emotionally change people's state through a workplace delivered presentation or interaction, they are going to think favorable of the employer. And even if you never did any services for those people, you could even refer those people out. You could refer them out to whether it's a new type of digital service out there, or the company that does stuff at remote advice. There's lots of opportunity there. I'm not saying it's right for every firm, but if you don't want to do it, find someone who is doing that and can deliver it to your employees.
Yeah.
To your business owner employees.
Jason, that's been absolutely fantastic. Time has flown by. I feel we could talk for a lot more. So thank you so much for your time today. Really, really do appreciate it. Now, a key part of this mastermind is a challenge where I'm asking each of my interviewees to set a little challenge, which, should they wish to accept it, the financial advisors watching this can join a private group where they can meet other people just like them, get an accountability partner, and literally take up the challenge. So, Jason, what sort of challenge would you be able to set for our viewers?
Well, I think I'm going to set something which ticks all the boxes of what I've been talking about. My challenge is that every financial advisor should try and, in 2019, have at least one meaningful interaction with the heirs of their existing customers' wealth. Whether they're going to become a client or not, or whether, whatever the situation is, whether that's a phone call, inviting them to an event, sending them some material in the post, inviting them to register for something, send them the financial fitness score, perhaps, it's for free. You don't have to register for it, and you're going to provide the show notes for that. Or send them a book about personal finance. There's several out there, as well as mine. There's Pete Matthew and there's Warren Shute and other people, British people. So something meaningful where you've had an interaction with the generation that's going to inherit your existing customers' wealth. I think if you did that as part of your 2019 communications and marketing plan, and measured it and tracked it and did it with every single potential inheritor, I think you'd be setting yourself up. Well, you certainly wouldn't be hurting your business, and I think you'd be setting up for a lovely.
You would not be hurting your business, indeed. With many financial advisors.
That's right, but don't let the new entrants come and steal the opportunity that's there. You have the right, you have the trust. All you need to do is find a way in of resonating with the next generation, and at least having the opportunity to be considered.
That's fantastic. That's a great challenge. Thank you very much indeed, Jason. So please stick around to the end of this video, everybody watching this, and we'll show you how to join the private group and how you can take on Jason's challenge and how you can meet up with other financial advisors, share how you're getting on with that, share a few ideas, buddy up with an accountability partner, and make this happen, because it will benefit your business. So all that remains for me is to say thank you so much, Jason Butler, for joining me today. It's been absolutely fantastic. Great to hear what you're doing now. Superb work, which everybody talks about all the time. This need to get at the broader market and to make people feel good about money, because the benefits to them, to their family, and to their employer are just amazing. So, Jason, thank you so much today. Great to see you, and thanks everybody for watching.